La présidente.
Dear members, dear colleagues, we gather here today to pay tribute to Alexei Navalny in the presence of his brave wife, Yulia Navalnaya. Dear Yulia, thank you for your readiness to speak in this chamber to the world in such painful circumstances. It is truly an honour to welcome you to the European Parliament. Before we begin, I would like to invite everyone to turn their attention to the screens to watch a short video about the life and legacy of Alexei Navalny.
Я мог развиваться, и моя семья могла развиваться. Это наша ментальность. Здравствуйте. Слава Богу, огромной страной не управлял.
Il coraggio che ha dimostrato Alexei desta stupore e ammirazione. Lo hanno minacciato, maltrattato, avvelenato, arrestato, incarcerato, ma non sono riusciti a metterlo a tacere. Ha lottato instancabilmente per il popolo russo.
Jailed opposition politician and Sakharov Prize laureate Alexei Navalny's condition remains of deep concern, with journalists reporting it as critical. So from here, on behalf of the European Parliament, let me once again call for his immediate and unconditional release. Dear Yulia, dear colleagues, on the 16th of February we received the tragic news of Sakharov Prize laureate Alexei Navalny's death. For many in Russia and outside, he represented hope. Hope in better days, hope in a free Russia, hope in the future. Hope that courage can overcome. And while his killers sought to cruelly extinguish that hope, They failed. The hope he represented remains as bright as ever. This House and its members condemn his killing in the strongest possible terms. It is a crime that deserves an international and independent investigation. The world is owed justice. While we pay tribute to his memory, I want to express our deepest condolences to you, dear Yulia, to your children, Daria and Zahar, to Alexei's parents, Lyudmila and Anatoly, to his family, friends and countless supporters in Russia and across the globe. Alexei Navalny dedicated his life to the fight against corruption and for a democratic Russia. He did not give up when they tried to poison him. He did not give up when he was unjustly imprisoned. He did not give up when his sentence was extended in a sham trial. He did not give up even when confronted with suffering and injustice. And neither must we. Democracy takes bravery, and Alexei understood that. That is why he went back to Russia in 2021. That is why he could not be broken. And that is exactly what made the regime so afraid of him. But Alexei's fight endures. The many brave people who took to the streets of Russia after his death shows, yet again, the fragility of authoritarianism. I take solace in that fact that if history teaches us anything, it is that the pillars of autocracy, in the end, always crumble under the weight of its own corruption and people's inherent desire to live freely. And when they inevitably do, it will be thanks to what Alexei and your family did. So, dear Yulia, on behalf of the European Parliament that stands in admiration of your courage, I thank you, and the floor is yours.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to hear me today. After Putin tried to kill Alexei for the first time, we lived in southern Germany for several months. Alexei was recovering from the poisoning, learning how to walk and try it all over again. We walked a lot, sometimes going on short trips. One of them, we went to Strasbourg with our children. It is one of my and Alexei's favorite cities. We have been there several times together, and then 3 years ago, we decided to show it to them. Now my husband is dead. I'm back to Strasbourg, but I'm no longer walking around with my family. I stay here and address you and in your person the whole Europe. I thought that in 12 days since Alexei's murder, I would have time to prepare for this speech. But first, we spent a week getting Alexei's body and organizing funeral. Then I chose the cemetery and coffin. The funeral will take place the day after tomorrow. And I'm not sure yet whether it will be peaceful or whether police will arrest those who have come to say goodbye to my husband. Thank you. However, I'm standing here because your voters have an important question. They are asking you about it, and then you're asking me. The question is, how can I help you in your fight? Last Saturday was 2 years since Putin started a full-scale war against Ukraine, a brutal and sneaky war. The whole world rushed to Ukraine's aid, but 2 years passed. There is much exhaustion, much blood, much disappointment, and Putin has gone nowhere. Everything has already been used. Weapons, money, sanctions, nothing is working. And the worst has happened. Everyone got used to the war. Here and there people start to say, well, we'll have to come to an agreement with Putin anyway. And then Putin killed my husband, Alexei Navalny. On his orders, Alexei was tortured for 3 years. He was starved in a tiny stone cell, cut off from the outside world, and denied visits, phone calls, and then even letters. And then they killed him. Even after that, they abused his body and abused his mother. On the one hand, the public murder has once again showed everyone that Putin is capable of anything and that you cannot negotiate with him. But on the thank you. But on the other side, I can also see how shocked everyone is. Many people have the feeling that Putin cannot be defeated at all. And in this desperation, they are now asking me, how can I help you? And I'm thinking about how Alexei would answer this question. I will try answer, but to do so, I have to tell you a little about what he was like. Alexei was an inventor. He always had new ideas for everything, but especially in politics. You have elections at the beginning of June. Many of you will be campaigning, meeting voters, giving interviews, shooting commercials. Now imagine that all of this is impossible. No TV station will do an interview with you. No money in the world can help you with the commercial. And the voters who came to the meetings will be arrested along with the candidate. Welcome to Putin's Russia. And yet, Alexei Navalny has managed to become the most famous politician there. He was able to inspire millions of people with his ideas. How did he do that? He was always fantasizing and experimenting. You are not allowed on TV. Let's learn how to make YouTube videos so the whole country can watch them. You are not allowed to vote. You can come up with a tactical voting strategy to take seats away from the ruling party. Even in Putin's gulag, Alexei managed to pass on ideas for projects that would make the Kremlin panic. He was the opposite of everything boring. This is the answer to the question. If you really want to defeat Putin, you have to become an innovator. You have to stop being boring. You cannot hurt Putin with another resolution or another set of sanctions. That is no different from the previous ones. You cannot defeat him by thinking he is a man of principle who has morals and rules. He is not like that, and Alexei realized that a long time ago. You are not dealing with a politician, but with a bloody monster. Putin is the leader of an organized criminal gang. Putin is the leader of sorry. Thank you. And it's good to repeat it again. Putin is the leader of organized criminal gang. This includes poisoners and assassins, but they are just puppets. The most important thing is the people close to Putin, his friends, associates, and keepers of mafia money. You and all of us must fight the criminal gang, and the political innovation here is to apply the methods of fighting organized crime, not political competition. Not diplomatic notes, but investigations into the financial machinations, not statements of concern, but a search of mafia associates in your countries for discreet lawyers and financiers who are helping Putin and his friends to hide money. In this fight, you have reliable allies. There are tens of millions of Russians who are against war, against Putin, against the evil he brings. We must not persecute them. On the contrary, you must work with them, with us. Putin must answer for what he has done with my country. Putin must answer for what he has done to a neighboring peaceful country. And Putin must answer for everything he has done to Alexei. My husband will never see what the beautiful Russia of the future will look like. But we must see it. And I will do... And I will do my best to make his dream come true. The evil will fall, and the beautiful future will come. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Navalnaya, for that powerful statement. Now we will have a round of speakers from all political groups, starting with the President of the EPP Group, Manfred Weber.
Madam President, Madam Navalny, I was informed about the death of Alexei Navalny at the beginning of the Munich Security Conference, Friday, 11 o'clock. Andrius Kubilius sent me a text message. My first thought was, this is not a coincidence. This is planned. This is the killer Putin behind. Last week was another final wake-up call. No one today can be so naive to doubt about the brutal and murderous nature of the Putin's regime. Dear Mrs. Navalny, Our thoughts are with you and your children, and all those who loved and admire your husband, Alexei Navalny. All of Europe mourns a brave man killed by a brutal regime. Alexei Navalny loved freedom, and for that he was deprived of it and locked up in prison. Alexei Navalny wanted a free Russia. That's why he couldn't be tolerated in Putin's unfree Russia. Alexei Navalny believed in people and knew how to inspire them. That is why the Putin regime prevented him from speaking. Navalny was a hope for Russia, but above all, he had hope. He had hope that the corruption will not be unpunished. His work helped identify many of Putin's friends who are now facing the toughest sanctions in Europe's history. He had hope in a democratic future for Russia. He showed Russians that one man saying no is enough to scare a regime. He had hope in power of truth, the truth that Putin hides, that Putin fears, but to which he will have to answer. Dear Ms. Navalny, we admire your courage. You are keeping alive the hope for a free and a democratic Russia. As Europeans, and as democrats, we will carry that hope with you together. Alexei Navalny died for freedom and democracy in Russia, just as people died for freedom and democracy in Warsaw, Berlin, Prague, in their fight against an unfree communism. Before 1988, not many could have imagined that once we would be here together, living in a free and democratic Europe. So what I want to say is everything is possible. That is why we will never give up the dream of a free and democratic Russia.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Weber. Now, on behalf of the S&D Group, Pedro Marques.
Madam President, Madam Navalnaya, today we pay tribute to Alexei Navalny, the 2021 Sakharov Prize laureate, for his courage and his ultimate sacrifice for democracy and for freedom in your country against the tyranny and the corruption of Putin's regime. He paid the highest price with his own life, but his legacy will live through you, through your family, and it will be honored through the Russian people. We express our heartfelt condolences to you, his brave wife, but also to your family. This House has repeatedly condemned in the strongest possible terms the persecution of Alexei Navalny, his poisoning, all the politically motivated rulings, the charges, the Trump charges, calling for his immediate and unconditional release. But you challenged us here today, and we heard you loud and clear. That is something that I want to say to you. The news of his death in the hands of the Putin regime in a remote Siberian prison outraged us and were met with the strongest condemnation. It sent shockwaves, you know, around Russia, but around the world. We could witness it personally all over Europe. Alexei was a political leader, one of the most bravest ones, with powerful convictions that inspired people, raising collective conscience for what was happening, is still happening in Russia. He represented the hope and the vision for a different, for a better Russia. His death brings us back to the memories, the darkest moments in the Russian history, and the conditions of his imprisonment and the violence he suffered makes Putin and the regime ultimately responsible for his fate. We demand an international and independent investigation into the circumstances of his death, and for all responsible for it for his detention, for his treatment, and for his death to be held account. Truth must be told, consequences must be borne, and justice must be served. The memory of Alexei will live into the ages. He was a fighter for democracy, and a democratic Russia will prevail one day. Be brave, Madam Navalnaya, for your family, for Alexei's memory, but for the people of Russia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Marques. And now for the Renew Europe Group, it's President Valérie Hayer.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam President. Dear Madam Navalnaya, before I speak to the Chamber, I'd like to speak directly to you. It's true that this ordeal is having an impact in international politics, but first and foremost, it's a personal torment. You have just lost your husband, and I'd like to extend my sincere condolences to you, to your 2 children, and to your family. Your courage is an example for us to follow. And please be aware that all Democrats pay tribute to the memory of Alexei Navalny. Alexei Navalny was a symbol of courage, of selflessness faced with injustice and corruption. Never wavering, he stood up until the end to a regime which answers challenges with repression and murders. We should say things clearly today. Yes, the full responsibility of this murder falls on the shoulders of the Russian state, and particularly its President Vladimir Putin. Alexei Navalny had uncovered the system that Putin has set up, a deeply corrupt system which had blocked all routes to power in the institutions. So if we really want to pay tribute to him, we should do what he always expected from us, continually suffocate Putin and his accomplices by all means possible. We need to move beyond resolution statements. We need to fight all those organizations which fund his criminal system. Dear colleagues, we cannot leave the Russian opposition alone. We must support them. We need to stand with them every single day, because despite the propaganda and the murders which are being exported around Europe, we need to address this. These are supporting Putin and his extremist colleagues. These extremes, when they get into power, seek to replicate Putin's playbook. Dear Ms. Navalnaya, let me reiterate our full support and also our full determination to support you in your courageous fight, a fight for a democratic and free Russia. We will always support you. We will stand with you until the end.
Merci. Merci, Madame Ayer. And now the co-president of the Green Group, Terry Reintke.
Dear colleagues, dear Yulia Navalnaya, it is hard to imagine what you have been going through in these last weeks, months, years. And when you were speaking about how you and your husband with your family were visiting Strasbourg a while ago and how you miss him right now, I was imagining what it would do to me if I lost my beloved partner to a brutal regime. And I know that probably it cannot even touch the pain that you have been feeling, but let me tell you on behalf of my whole group that we share this pain, we strongly support you, and we are by your side in this difficult time. In order to keep your husband's memory alive, we have to do everything in our power, not only to demand an independent investigation, but also to protect the remaining political prisoners in Russia and all those who are suffering from this brutal regime. The murder of Alexei Navalny has made it clear yet again. The biggest enemy of Vladimir Putin is democracy. The biggest enemy of Vladimir Putin is freedom. Freedom and democracy are what Putin is most afraid of because they threaten his democratic rule, and they were symbolized by your brave late husband. They threaten his system based on corruption and lies. So our struggle has to be even more determined. Let us fight for our democracy and freedom here in Europe, but also let us stand in solidarity with all those fighting for it in Russia and elsewhere in the world. And even in this difficult time, when we all have difficult debates back home, when there are a lot of political challenges ahead of us, colleagues, we can never forget the price that so many political prisoners in Russia, in Belarus and elsewhere are paying to fight for freedom and democracy. If they have the strength to fight and pay this price, we cannot be tired. If they have the strength to go on, we have to do all we can in order to support them. Because in the end of the day, I am sure, and I want to say this to you, in the end of the day, freedom will win. There will be a free Russia, and we will fight for you. We will fight for it side by side together with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Reintke. And now for the ECR Group, Nicola Procaccini.
Grazie Presidente.
Thank you, President. Well, several times here in this chamber, I've taken the floor, but I have never felt the weight of my words to such an extent as I do today. We're all very moved, and we really get a sense of history today. I heard the words of Mrs. Navalnaya, and I tried to maintain a respectful detachment so that I wasn't swayed by emotion, but it was difficult. Now, personally, I've been following Alexei Navalny's political activities for years, and I've always appreciated his imagination and his courage, and also the faith with which he pushed his ideas, even when few people could understand the meaning and value of what he was saying. He was labelled an extremist. Even the Western mainstream media labelled him as such at times. But the fact is that Navalny was a man who loved his country. He loved Russia, its people and its history. He was a Christian. He was born to a military family. He was no pacifist. But he always fought for his country without using weapons and without fear. There were many attempts made on his life, cowardly attempts. They always managed it, but it didn't work. So he kissed his wife, he said goodbye to his children, he went back to Russia. And he knew full well that the worst prison sentence awaited him and a certain death. His existence is over, but his dream of a free Russia in peace with the world is not. Someone said, "Blessed is the people which doesn't need heroes." I don't agree. All peoples need heroes in peace and in war. And they are the men and women who speak to and for others, even when everyone else is alone and silent. Like the boy who, in August, many years ago, set fire to himself in front of the Soviet tanks that were invading Prague. When Jan Palach died, freedom was victorious, and the Europe that we all love was born. And it will be the same for Alexei Navalny. A free man was killed, but thousands were born in Russia, in Europe, and in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Procaccini. Now for the ID Group, Jack Madison.
Thanks so much, Madam President, dear Ms. Navalnaya. First of all, from our political group, all the regrets goes to you and for your children, for your son and daughter, because the biggest loss what you're going to have is to lose your father as a children. So that's why it was very emotional to listen your statement, and I agree that most of us will absolutely feel what do you feel, even if it's very hard for us to feel the same as you are doing. You were saying absolutely right things about Russia, the current Russia, what we have today. And the very sad story is that the independent polling stations have shown that too many people are still supporting the regime of Putin. They're supporting the ideas of the old imperialist Russia. There are about 70% of the people who are saying that, yes, we have to restore the great Russia and should have the same kind of borders what they had in history. But the other side of the coin is that almost 30% of the Russian people doesn't like those ideas. It means that almost 30 million people in Russia would like to have a normal country with a stability, with a freedom and peace. And as I'm from Estonia, of course, we feel it like from the bones. Like, what is it like to live next to the country who would like to occupy you? But it gives hope also for us to have a normal future, normal cooperation, because I'm sure that everybody here in this room would like to have a normal cooperation with the biggest country in the world, that's called Russia, to have a normalized relations, to have a normal economy, to have a normal friendship. And that's also my looking forward like for the future, that maybe in the future one day it is possible to have normalized relations with our neighbors. And that gives the hope that there are still about 30 million people, including you, who are standing against this regime and hoping for the better Russia and a better future. I think it's said enough. I really wish the best for you and for your children, and I'm more than sure that in one day we will have a great country called Russia, who has no kind of imperialist ideas and will have normal relations with all the neighbours in Europe. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Madison. Finally, on behalf of the Left Group, Nikolai Willumsen.
Thank you, President. Dear Yulia Navalnaya, it is both good and very sad to see you here today in Strasbourg. It is so incredibly sad because of the reason for you being here is so tragic and wrong. Nobody should have to die for speaking up for what they believe in. All of us here today mourn with you the loss of your husband, Alexei Navalny, a man who became one of the symbols who stood up for what he believed in and spoke out loud, also in the face of repression. Alexei Navalny helped expose Putin to the world. He shined a light on the enormous corruption of Putin and his oligarch friends. It was something that clearly frightened Putin, because despots like Putin are afraid of facts, of debate, of truth. And your husband, and for that he was poisoned and he was accused by the Putin regime. He was unjustly jailed, tortured, and he paid the ultimate price. And yet, despite the sadness and the loss that led here, it is also good to hear you and to see you speaking out here today in Strasbourg, because it means that Putin did not succeed in silencing the critique. It means that the fight against repression continues. Dear Yulia Navalnaya, to offer you my condolences seems way too little. What I can offer you is my profound respect and admiration for the work of your husband and of you, and for everyone who dares to stand up against despots like Vladimir Putin. May the death of Alexei Navalny not be in vain. May democracy triumph in the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Thank you, Ms. Navalnaya. This session is now closed. Thank you, dear colleagues. Let's go straight to the voting session. Brando Benifei, point of order. Number 88. 88.
Okay. Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you, President. I wanted to raise